Newcastle will be opening the show, so I'll just pass it on to him. Thank you, kids.
Thank you. Thank you, Fiona. This is kind of weird. Somebody's talking behind me. 14 billion years ago, the only matter that existed in our universe was hydrogen. And this hydrogen attracted itself to itself and formed stars. And then those stars then produced helium, which is what stars do. Our sun is doing it at the moment, so it keeps us warm. Then they get big, a couple of billion years later they die, and then they explode. And when they explode, we actually then get other heavier elements. One of the elements that we get from that is iron. Now, iron is what actually makes our blood red. So iron is also what we see when we look at the red earth in Australia. So when we look at each other, when we look at our pink, I was going to say pink bits, when we look at each other and we see, you know, the pink of our flesh, what we're actually seeing, amazingly so, is stardust. It is literally, the process is called, I wrote this down, thank you Wikipedia, that's much as I tell my students not to quote from it. It's supernova nucleosynthesis. So that's what actually makes it possible for us to be alive right now, is that somewhere a star exploded. I don't know, I think that's absolutely amazing. And when we look at Neil Booth's work here, this is what we're actually seeing, and I think it's really interesting, and I've got no... Ooh, hello. I've got no idea whether Neil was intending this, but it's interesting that he's mixed the red earth with charcoal, which is carbon. So here we actually have these elements on the wall which are essential for human life to exist in the first place. And that made me think, when I was looking around this exhibition, I popped in the other day when they just installed it, and I was looking around the exhibition and I thought, what is a common theme here? And I thought, life and time. For me this is an exhibition, all these different exhibitions just happen to share this combined theme of life and time. So, I've talked about Neil's work. Now, Delight Van Wyck's work is in the locker room here, and her work addresses specifically her life as an immigrant into Australia, which, I mean, this may come as a surprise to some of you, but I wasn't born here. I know. I too am an immigrant. I came from Wales, which you would only die of boredom in Wales. In South Africa, it's a much more dangerous place. So it's an interesting story, really. It's a story about rupture. It's a story about a narrative that's ruptured by the violence of that particular place. And they're very, I don't know if any of you have had this kind of temptation, but they're very kind of tangible, touchable sort of works. I'm not encouraging anyone to do that, not unless you want to buy the works if they're great. But that was another aspect that I thought shared with Niels, was this idea of life that we see within her work. And then I sort of wandered through here to the long room where David Hampton is. And David Hampton's work, David's just here, I recognised kind of immediately in the corner of one of his works was the TARDIS, about this big. Now, for any of you who don't know what the TARDIS is, where have you been living? But I've noticed actually David is kind of dressed up in a slightly Doctor Who-ish outfit. And I'm hoping actually, David, that you will go on and do your PhD and then change your surname by default to Who. But yeah, I like these works. They really appeal to, you know, the kind of childhood imagination, the cutaway diagrams, you know, trains. There's a bit of psychedelia going on in there, certainly. And then right in the very next room is the work by Rose Turner, which is a very large, I think it's 9 meters, is it, Rose? Where is she? 9 meters? Fantastic work. I think it's really gorgeous work, really appeals to me on a number of levels. Not least because there are dugongs having sex with mermaids. Bit of interspecial sex, never heard of... No, I'm not going there. Really beautiful work. And then, of course, you know, Rose has also continued that theme in the pit here, where we have the exhibition, Oh My God and What the Hell. Is that said right? Who chose the title? Oh my God, what the hell? So in the exhibition we have Rose again, but also Jacob, Grant Hunter and Luke Johnston, and each of these people in some way deals with the human body, and again that is very much about life. You look at the work in the pit, and all of those works have a kind of an energy about them. That isn't some fancy trick out there, this is just the equipment. I loved what it said. Did anyone read what it said on the invitation? It was really great. There's a great quote. It says, "These works are sure to touch you, maybe in places you didn't ask for." Very creepy. And then, funnily enough, that leads us to the exhibition at the back, which is Bed. Strangely enough, a very unsexy exhibition. I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's not to do with Bed as a site of sex necessarily, but it is very much to do with the bed as a kind of a private space. And I thought that was really interesting with the works back there. If you look at now, Brock's work shows what must be a dorm or a student house or something like that. There's the same bed that you see over and over again, but with different sheets. This idea of a bed, it was in 1955, Robert Rauschenberg mounted a bed vertically on a wall and slapped some paint on it and called it Bed. And you know, that was a comment at the time about using the surface of the canvas as a flat kind of bed. But we've come on from that these days, and the bed now has all these other kind of connotations. So we look at these works and we see into the private lives of people, which is a bit kind of voyeuristic. Which leads me finally to Chris Brown. A work which the title is hideous, but I like to pronounce it Hideos. Hideos. There's something medieval about that work. Does anyone agree? I'm in a minority of one, aren't I? Yes, thank you, Mary. There is something quite sadistic about these works. There's something quite kind of sad about them. There's something quite entertaining about them. Very, very interesting book that Chris has included in the exhibition as well, of a number of people in various stages of being drug affected. The reason why I say it's kind of medieval, there's a vague sort of freak show kind of thing about it. But with that becomes, it's a kind of a rejection of the serious way that we could take life, I think. And that brings us to the end of my opening address. Now, I did promise myself I wouldn't be any longer than 10 minutes, and I think I've kept it to that. So, thank you very much. Thanks to Fiona. Thanks to Anne. Thanks very much to Kaylee for inviting me to open the show. It's been a real pleasure. And I now declare this exhibition open. Thank you. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you, Kit. If you missed the introduction, Kit is lecturing in art theory and art history at the University of Newcastle. He's been there a couple of years or so now. Are your lectures as dynamic as that little talk?
Yes. Oh, shucks.
Oh,